Hey everybody, it's me, the Center Wall Street, from the balcony here at the New York Stock Exchange. In the absence of Dan Ives, #1 tech analyst in the world, in my world, the smartest person I know is my man Tim Anderson. Welcome to the show. My brother, great to have you.
Peter, it's great to be with you today.
Let's talk for a minute. So we are 2 months into 2025. We are 1 month into the new administration. The market has gone through a lot, and I think I would bet if I asked you what grade you'd give this market relative to all the things going on over the first month is probably in the B's, and low A minus, probably B's. But I'll ask you that question in a minute. But let's sort of talk about it, because you know, we know at the end of 2024, market got knocked off its pedestal once the Federal Reserve decided to change their guidance going forward. We came into the beginning of the year. We started, you know, the new administration. The key to the new administration is how they disseminate information. If you go back to Trump 1.0, right? We know that, you know, that style of sort of, it's a bit of a sparring game. It's sort of a call to action. It's a bit of a, you know, call to the negotiation table that he does, while he'll, in the middle of a day, he'll spurt out a 25, percent tariff to China, 10 more to China, to Canada, and to Mexico. So we have been sort of tossed around like a seagull in a hurricane in the first month by Mr. Trump's aggressive way of sparring with the global economic community. Where are we market-wise? We are still almost near record highs. And we are, you know, we are the first, probably, I would say the first 4 months are probably going to be a meet and greet between us and Mr. Trump and the cabinet and all of his policies, which are just forever going to be a learning experience. And I think for him as well. But, you know, I want to go back to the DeepSeek story, because that was where we drew a line in the sand. Everybody who knows this, DeepSeek, one of the top top AI apps coming out of China, announced a couple of weeks ago that they can do for $6 million what NVIDIA would spend $100 million, 10 cents on the dollar, and the stock lost $598 billion of value in one day, the largest drop beyond the crash of 29, COVID, whatever. Never before have you ever seen that much valuation dropped in one day. We've gotten back a lot of that loss, right? Because that story has morphed into a lot more. It turns out that
nobody believes China's numbers on it anyway. So.
Exactly, and that China there was a subsidy. They subsidized it into the tune of hundreds of millions. So the story is not legit. Okay, so we've made our way back from a lot of that negativity. But the market, how do you see this market? Have we gotten our footing yet? What do we have to look forward to? And where do you see us now with the Dow, the S&P, the Russell, and the NASDAQ trading where they are? How do you see this market?
Well, I think it's really two conversations. Okay. You have to talk about the tech market. Okay. And you have to talk about the big AI-infused trade that really drove tech and for most of last year. Because if you remember, we were almost starting to take some very serious profits in tech very early last year, until all of a sudden this AI phenomena overtook everything, and we took a couple of legs higher off that. And then it became this big conversation about building data centers and how much money that was going to make for power generating companies and the potential for alternative power companies.
Right.
And that now has faded quite a bit, because not one of these data centers has been built yet. Okay. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, wants 8,000 pages of information on it before they approve any of it. There's been no co-location plant even that's broken ground yet. So a lot of that trade...
It's all speculation. So much of it is speculation.
It's hypothetical. Right, it's not complete speculation. Right. It could be a very realistic thing, but it could be 2 years away.
Right.
Okay? And so the market, being maybe a little bit impatient, is saying 2 years is kind of a long time from now. You know, we still want to know a lot about it, and we still maybe want to have some feelers out there in some aspects of this, but we're not going to go all in until we see some real action.
Okay.
So, but that has not deterred the market, the S&P 500 and the other aspects of the market, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average and other big market metrics, from having very good performance and very real potential to go significantly higher as the year plays out. Even some aspects of the tech market, if you really want to say the old school tech names or the real old school tech
Is that
names,
what's carrying
like
the
IBM.
Dow higher, right? I mean, that's obviously a
IBM
big
is within
heavy-weighted, right?
is within points of an all-time high. Does not sell off when you have big
Mag 7
selling
right.
going on in the tech and AI dominated space, and a lot of these tech names, for the big moves that they've had, they need to perform. They need to show real performance. And yesterday and this morning, it's not just what their earnings are, but it's how the market is reacting to their earnings report. Right. NVIDIA looked okay for a few hours.
Right.
It was up 2 to 3 points after its earnings report. The reaction low on the big sell-off was maybe 116, 118.
Right.
It
Never
got up to
down
135.
Right.
Now it's down 5 points today.
Right.
Okay, but Snowflake is the opposite story. They had a very, very strong earnings report. That stock has had a big move. It was up 20 points. It's now maybe up about 12 to 14 points.
And then we had Salesforce, which also had weaker
Salesforce
numbers,
down
right?
5%.
Right.
Pure Storage, a big AI-related name,
Right.
a great company, but earnings didn't hit all the metrics that people were really hoping for. A little bit disappointment there, down 10%.
Okay.
Stock is still way up from where it
So
was.
let's talk about that. It's
6
really,
to 12 months ago.
You all need to understand. If the greatest metric for me is to go back to February 2023, where Nvidia was trading at $108. February 2024, Nvidia was trading at $900. June 2024, Nvidia was at $1,200 when it split 10 for 1. All of these stocks have it's how the price action is and how the actual perception in the market feels about these stocks. There's been irrational enthusiasm around the Mag 7, around Nvidia, best of breed, around a lot of these names. And now that we're sort of coming into reality a little bit, they've got to be firing on every piston to really be able to support the valuation where they are now, especially with that speculation that you're talking about. Let's dip back in for a second and step away from tech for a minute and talk about how you see the first month of the new administration and the whole tariff question. How do you see that playing out relative to where we are in the marketplace?
Well, I think, let's say intermediate to long term, it's just extremely positive.
Okay.
Because you're having the very, very likelihood increased significantly over the last 48 hours that the Trump tax cuts will be, from 2017, will be extended.
Okay.
We don't know the details on that yet. Okay. It's not going to happen in the next week or two,
right,
because it's going to be a gut-wrenching process to have this bill written under the requirements that it has to be written under for it to go through the reconciliation approval in the Congress, which means it has to be at least budget neutral.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
Now, the very, very positive side, which still there's some controversy about it. There always will be from some very politically partisan groups.
Right.
The
That's a
government,
nice way of saying it.
the government efficiency group,
right,
being run by Elon Musk,
right,
is so far, I think, wildly exceeding expectations.
Right.
And I think that that they will come up with significant savings in the waste, fraud, abuse,
right,
category.
Right.
That having this big budget bill be deficit neutral will become easier over time. Now, I think that
so
bill
it should offset it in a way. It should net be
I think that bill needs to be passed by September 1st,
okay,
to be effective for the 2026 fiscal year,
okay,
which is when the tax cuts otherwise would be set to
okay,
expire. Okay, so that being said, I just think that where there's, headlines and one-off stories about people getting fired by the government.
Right.
Look, I'm not saying the government should be run just like Fortune 500 companies are, but it can't be run with the idea that once you get a job there, you're guaranteed a job for life with Cadillac Platinum insurance,
right,
and that should pass on to your heirs, and they should have that for life,
right,
and somehow 100 years from now we'll figure out how to pay for it all.
Right,
it's just unrealistic. It's been gamed. That's been gamed by people. And I think, look, you listen to Elon Musk's comments yesterday in the cabinet meeting. It's very likely that a lot of these government employees that have not been required to go into work for the last 4 years since COVID, they could be dead. They could not exist. They could just be phantom people that have been created with altered documents and direct deposits going into accounts somewhere.
This is the espionage interpretation of the story. Let's go back for a second. So
the savings are going to be massive.
Okay. So whatever side of your spectrum you're on, that is clear. There has been so much fat across the board in government that for somebody to come in and be able to.
And this is something that both political parties have talked about doing for decades. For decades. The only reason that one political party right now is against it all is because it's the other political party that's so far being very successful.
Correct. Okay.
Now, even when Bill Clinton was president from 92 to 2000, he cut 377,000 government jobs during that period of time.
All right. Well, that's great info. So don't think this is a Dem-Republican situation. Let's talk about tariffs. So it's clear that obviously, look, markets can handle anything except surprises and unrequited love. So Mr. Trump's style is it's a bit bullish, bullying, right? And we know, look, if you look at today, they came out 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and then we're going to have 10% on China. And then you know what? Just as a little addendum, Mr. Trump decided he was going to throw an additional 10% on China. Now, look, it's his approach, it's his manner, it's perception around how he deals with these things. My gut is, look, I think the market, if you'll go back to the first time he tweeted in this new administration, Trump 2.0, right, the market reacted aggressively on that day. We sold off 70 handles that day that he said we're going to do 25% tariffs. And since then, people are already getting a little bit used to his approach, right? That's sort of throwing out he's like sparring. Think about a boxing match. Mike Tyson against whoever, right? The night before the match, they stand up in front of each other and they just start screaming at each. It's kind of how I see Mr. Trump go at whoever. These are negotiating tactics. At the end of the day, deals will be made. He said, I'm going to make deals with my friends and my foes. At the end of the day, things that we're going to start, that everything has been stale, right, up till this point, and we are going to make deals, right? Guys, deal with the way I deal with stuff. That's who I am. That's how I do business. That's my art of the deal, right? Going back, that book was written by a guy I went to high school with, right? Schwartz. But anyway, all that being said, so net, I think the market is already adjusting to Mr. Trump's mannerisms around the laying out the groundwork for the tariff story. Right? It'll come out with a big blast. He'll pull back. He'll delay it for a little bit. He'll go into negotiation mode. But net, it's all about making a deal. So I think the market is already responding because now when a tweet comes out, the market doesn't go down 1,000 points. It's sort of, maybe it does react in a fast and furious way, but it gets its footing fairly quickly. Do you agree with me that this is a negotiation? The one
thing that I would add, I think you have to make a differentiation, and the market is doing this a little bit already, and it will be noted by key people in the administration on it, that there is a big difference between punitive tariffs and reciprocal tariffs. Reciprocal tariffs means basically that if Europe is imposing a 25% tariff on cars that we send over there, which may also include their VAT tax, which the administration is looking at as a tariff, although it's technically not, that we're saying, well, we're going to put 25% tariffs on any European products, European cars that come in to this country. That's a reciprocal tariff. That is just to, as they would say, level the playing field and make trade fair. So in a perfect world, what would happen then, if we had a 25% tariff on an industry sector from a country that had a 25% tariff on our product going there, eventually we would sit across from each other at the table and say, you know what, we're charging you 25%, you're charging us 25%. It's kind of ridiculous. Why don't we just both scrap it? Okay? But believe me, President Trump would never get the Europeans to take their tariff off our exports
Right.
unless he first put tariffs on their exports and let them stew about it
Right.
for
Well, look,
3 months or
that's his-
so
that's
and
his bit-
see how what that does to their economic reality.
I love that. It's a really wonderful explanation because I don't think people understand who's benefiting and who's suffering from this tariff game. Think about it too. You brought this up to me that our relationship with Canada and with Mexico, we import. What do we import? 6% of things from Canada, and they import 85% from us.
Yeah.
Right. So
Right.
if you think about that, then it's all
It's
uneven. It's
Right,
uneven.
Right.
So how does that pan
and
out?
where some people would describe Trump as bullying these countries, he would say they've been bullying us for decades, and
By not paying their share.
and our leaders have just been taking it.
Right. Right.
So,
Okay. All right. So look, net, the way to come out of this story is that everyone's going to we're going to understand as the policies start to come out, we're going to go country to country, sector to sector, and we're going to make deals.
And a
That's
lot of
what
it is it's the uncertainty over what impact these tariffs will really have. If you go back to the tariffs that he put on in the second half of his
first
administration, it actually in reality had very little economic impact on the American consumer.
Okay. All right.
Okay. But it's the old saying: the market loves good news. It can deal with bad news because it can still model it. It
Right.
just doesn't like uncertainty.
That's right, exactly.
And there's uncertainty as to what tariffs are actually going to be
imposed. Right.
How long will they be imposed for, and what will the economic impact be?
Good. And that's
hard
still
to model right
exactly,
now.
and that's still an unknown. But granted, look, we were a month into this administration. We've stirred up this box. This is like, look, how do things grow? You stir up the earth and the dirt, and you rake it, and you make it grow, and that's where we're at.
And the other thing that I think is worth talking about right now, because it's very timely,
Tell
and
me.
not too many people really are talking about it. And I think it's a direct result of some of the impact from Doge so far.
Okay.
The 10-year note is
Right, talk about that. Right,
is at 4.25%, maybe 4.3%.
Okay.
Now, 2 months ago, the 10-year note was at 4.6%.
And as that lifted, the market was under
4.7%.
pressure.
And on many occasions, as the 10-year note got closer to 5,
Right.
the tech stocks would get hit for a couple of days
Right.
and then come back and make new
Right.
highs. Then the 10-year note would go higher, and they would hit again. They'd get
Right.
hit again. Well, now that's down,
Right.
significantly below 4.5,
Right.
at around.
So
I didn't look
maybe
at it
that's
before,
one of the things that's supporting.
4.3%.
So is that one of the things contributing to the support that the market has? Because with all of these unknowns as you described, we are still trading at 43.8 on the
Yeah.
Dow. We're
Yeah.
trading right below 6,000 on the SPY.
Yeah.
We're trading at 21
Right.
plus thousand on the Nasdaq. Net,
That will
we are
and-
still trading at
Yes,
close
that
to record
will
high.
and should give some support to the overall market. It has not yet given a lot of support to the tech market. And I
Understood.
just think the tech tape is still suffering from a little bit of exhaustion and people being a little overextended in that sector from the dominance that sector has had over the last 2 to 3 years.
And that's huge. And one last thing. So you talked about rotation. You and I often will talk about this. You think about it when there's news in the market and then there's bad news in the market and there's a lot of fear in the market, people sell stocks and they get out of stocks and they go into cash. That's not what we're seeing here. We're seeing them get out of one sector and into another, right?
Yeah,
They've got their beautiful outperformers that they've had, tech being one of those big parts of the market, and you're seeing them get into consumer staples hitting record highs in the Russell, mid cap, small cap, and whatnot. So there's money being moved around.
Yes.
It's not as if people are fearful of this new administration, that they're not sure what's going on, that there are looming big sellers out there that are just waiting to pounce on this market, right? And that we're waiting for something bad to happen. At the end of the day, people are moving money around to position themselves for the end of Q1, Q2, and what this administration has to look forward to.
Right, and I think that there's There's different parts to that trade. There's been a tremendous amount of interest in deep value stocks that have been sold very, very hard for a period of time, either because they were just out of favor or there were
There was better return on investment with
concern-
tech and stuff.
Right, but the stocks with big dividends have done
Right.
very, very well. Even stocks like Merck, which is in the pharmaceutical industry,
Right.
which potentially has a lot of issues under the new Trump administration,
Right.
but it's still got a very attractive yield, and the dividend will probably hold that up a little bit. And AT&T, a stock which underperformed for 15
years. Right,
years,
exactly.
is very, very sneakily
Inching its way
10
higher.
points higher
Right.
than it was
6 months
18
ago.
months ago.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interest in deep value dividend stocks, or stocks that have had big corrections for
a while.
specific issues. That Boeing had very well publicized issues.
Right. We know that.
The low in that stock was right around 145, 150 level late in the fourth quarter of last year. That stock's now low 170s. Got a number of higher lows on
Right.
the chart over the last 4 months. And look, eventually, you just have to believe that company will repair itself, and that there will be an upgrade market for big jet airplanes. There always is, about every 8 to 10 years or so.
Last thing I'm going to say is you're optimistic. What's your overall sense of the next year in this market?
So I think that as we go forward and we get
More clarity
we
around
get
Mr.
more definition on what this big budget bill will look
Right.
like. We get more definition on how much money is really being saved by this scaling down of
Right. That's huge.
big
Right.
government, which everyone would agree has been bloated to a ridiculous level
Correct.
over
We're
the
talking
last 30
potentially
years.
trillions of dollars. Yes.
Yes, and I also think that the Fed has got one more interest rate cut before sometime in the second quarter.
Right.
Which, people right now, the consensus might be, well, we had a cut in the first half, we're gonna have a cut in the second half.
Right.
That'll be it. I think we might have one or two more than
I
that.
kind of agree with you.
And then we get through, we're kind of working out where we're most of the way through earnings season right now,
Right.
through the high impact part of it. We get through the second quarter of earnings season, and we get, and the other big event to look for,
Tell me.
we're on the verge of a peace deal with
Correct.
the Ukraine and Russia.
Right.
Okay, we're much closer to, I wouldn't know if
Some
I'd call it a
sunset.
peace deal,
No,
but
but
a
some settlement in the
resolution
Middle East.
in the Middle East.
Right.
Okay, those are the two major conflicts that have been percolating. The
And surely
Ukraine
weighing on
for
the market.
3 years, the Middle East, you could say, for decades. But clearly, that big issue,
Yep.
the current issue, started there. There's going to be a resolution for that.
Yep.
That part of the world's, that Gaza area is probably going to look very, very different going
In the
forward.
coming years. Yep.
Now, in the early 90s, a few years after the Berlin Wall came down in
Germany.
right, in '89, and then we got past the Resolution Trust real estate fiasco, and the Soviet Union basically dissolved. You had for 5 to 6 years a rally that just was relentless.
Wow.
Not in an exuberant way. It was before the internet revolution really was a thing.
Okay. Before 95.
Before 95.
Right.
And that was really what people eventually called the peace dividend rally.
Right. Right.
And
You've been talking about that for a while.
And if we get these
Keep
two
your eyes open for the peace dividend.
big conflicts
Right.
around the globe
Right.
resolved
Right.
without something else coming up out of the blue,
Right.
you could have you could have a significant peace dividend rally, maybe that might start to kick in toward the
second half of this year.
Second half of the year.
I love it. You know, you're wonderful. In the absence of Dan Ives, Tim Anderson is the smartest guy down here on the floor. Also, the second best dressed guy there is. I'm so glad we went over this because, look, everybody's really wondering. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, and to really put everything and compartmentalize and try and figure out what it all means, what it looks like going forward, your mind works that way in a beautiful way. So, you know, and mine doesn't. And I'm so grateful that you gave us this. I think everybody who's watching this is a hell of a lot smarter than they were about 17 minutes ago. So you're the best, man. Thanks for coming. And that's all I got to say about
Thank you so much for having me.
that.